well, selfishly, I want to ask you questions that I want to know about, so I'm scared.
Hurry up.
Yeah, you might as well bring the microphone.
All right, so I'm going to be selfish. My name's Trevor. I'm with Fangoria Magazine. I'm going to ask this gentleman a few questions of my own, and then we're going to throw it out to the audience, and we're going to ask you guys some questions. So first question I would like to start with, the stunt business. How did you get into that? Did you dream of being a stuntman as a young boy growing up in California? How did you end up in this odd profession?
Tell me, can you hear me back there without the mic, or would you rather I use it?
Use it.
I like it. Let's do the mic.
Mr. Antisocial had to sit way in the back, didn't he?
Make sure that everyone gets
Okay, all right, that's fine. He's a big shot, so he has to sit in the back. So anyway, when I was in going to college, studying geography, majoring in geography, which I still love, by the way, I went to Los Angeles to visit a buddy of mine. He told me we should go on the tour of Universal Studios, and I thought, I guess so. And we went, I enjoyed it, and then we watched the stunt show at the end. Just a crappy little Old West stunt show, but I loved it. And I thought, wow, what a great job that would be to make a living doing crazy stuff like that that looks like pure fun. And so I stopped and talked to one of the stunt guys at the end, asked him how he got into the business. He said, there's a stunt school in Santa Monica. If you're interested, they don't guarantee you getting into the business, but they'll train you. And I said, that's good enough for me. So after my next semester at school, during the following year, I decided to try the stunt school during the summer. And I absolutely loved it. I loved the whole idea of doing stunts, because my whole life I was entertained and would entertain my friends with doing dangerous shit. And just to see their expressions on their faces, like prime example, it's in my book, I think, but I played quite a few sports in high school, and I grew up in the Marshall Islands in the South Pacific. So in order for us to compete against other high school teams in sports, we had to go to Hawaii. And we went to Hawaii one year to play basketball against a couple high schools, because we always had to compete in men's leagues, which is hard to do when you're 16 years old, playing basketball in a men's league. So we went and played a couple high schools in Hawaii. A few of us went down to the Ala Moana Hotel at the Ala Moana Shopping Center. And we wanted to see what the view looked like, so we went up to the top floor, 35th floor, I think it was at the time. And there was an observation balcony. And we were all standing there looking at the incredible view at 35 floors up, overlooking Hawaii, so it was amazing. And I thought, I'm gonna see if I can entertain my friends and teammates. So I climbed over the railing, and standing with my feet on the bottom where their feet were, but I'm on the other side, at the outside of the railing, holding on to the railing like this. Obviously, they all started shitting themselves just watching that. I said, Dom, what are you doing? And because all I have to do is slip and I'm dead, 350 feet or whatever it is down. And so I loved their reaction so much that I started doing this. I was holding on to the rail. I said, guys, what's the matter? And then that was it. They took off. All of them ran back in the hotel. They were so terrified that they didn't want to see me slip, and I just laughed my ass off. So I thought, I enjoyed that so much and liked the tour when I saw it, and thinking, wait, people actually get paid for that stuff that I do just to entertain myself and my friends. So I went to the stunt school and never went back to college, which wasn't a wise move on my part. It could have been disastrous, because I never got my degree. If I hadn't made it in the stunt business, I would have been screwed. So it was quite a risk, but I finished the stunt school, and then the trick is getting into the Screen Actors Guild, which is what you have to be a member of that to work on any film in stunts or acting. And that's an impossible task if you don't, you can't get into Screen Actors Guild unless you're hired to do a SAG movie. And you won't get hired to do a SAG movie unless you're in the Screen Actors Guild. So it's like a catch-22 situation where you can't do either one. And eventually I had someone that did me a favor, gave me a job on a show called Hunter, a TV show, but not the one that you're thinking of, not Fred Dryer. It was an earlier series with James Franciscus. And I got a little half-assed stunt job to do on that. And they still hired me, even though I wasn't in SAG, knowing that they'd be fined for doing so. But you know, somebody was able to get me to that place where they did me a favor, and I got into SAG and then said, that's it, I'm done, I'm good now, I'm a success, and starved for 8 years trying to work enough to make a living, because every time I would work a day, I absolutely loved it, but then, you know, there'd be so long between that and the next job because you don't know anybody and you don't have a reputation. And then at that time is when I got burned doing a fire stunt trying to promote my career. So that set me way back again because I was in the hospital for 5.5 months. And recovering from burns is no easy task because once you heal from the burns, then you have all of the tightness from the scars that you have to work out again. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Eventually, I started working a little bit more and more, and very gradually, I started making a living. Meager living, but I started making a living, and then I did a movie called Prison, where I was finally able to present myself as a stunt coordinator. I had done enough stunts in movies like Lone Wolf McQuade and things like that with Chuck Norris and people that I started getting a little reputation. In 1985, I was hired to stunt coordinate a movie called House, my first one I ever did. And because of that, I was hired to be a stunt coordinator on Prison. So this is a long fucking answer to a simple question, but I stunt coordinated Prison. Rennie Harlan directed it. Viggo Mortensen was a main character in it, which these guys are very well known now. And at the end of it, they asked me to play a character, since I was a stunt guy, play a character in full body makeup called Forsyth. And I'm only in a few shots. At the end of the movie, I come out of the ground, strapped to an electric chair. And it was a full 3.5 hour full body makeup. And it took all that time to put it on, and then I only shot for 2 days in it. But the director, Rennie, liked how I worked in it because it's a whole different deal. It's a whole different way of acting when you have prosthetics on. And then John Beekler, who was the makeup effects coordinator on that movie and the person that applied the makeup to me, really liked how I worked in the makeup. And, you know, an instance that showed him how much I try to put into a character, even then, was as I come out of the ground, I'm supposed to be a rotted corpse. So Rennie says, you know, we'd like to put live night crawlers all over you to make them look like they're coming out of your rotting body. And I said, sure, that's fine. And I said, hey, you know what would be even great, even better? I have to scream as I come up out of the ground and everybody looks, and I scream. So I said, how cool would it be to have the live night crawlers coming out of my mouth when I'm screaming? And he goes, you do that? And I said, yeah, it's not a big deal, just rinse them off, and jammed them in. I had about 15 of them in there full. I think a good 12 of them ended up coming out. I don't know where the other 3 went, but Beekler liked my enthusiasm for trying to put as much as I could into a character like that. A minor character, not seen on screen very often, very long, but he liked what I tried to put into it. So the next year he was hired to direct Friday the 13th, Part 7. They had done 6 previous. Every movie, a different guy had played Jason, so they weren't set on anyone in particular. And Beekler said, this is the guy I want to play Jason. And they were like, okay, well, we'll think about that. And I did a screen test. in a version of the Jason makeup and just ad-libbing some violent shit, and they shot it on film. And when they saw it, they said, okay, that's good. And then, you know, once I did that movie, each director after that for the next 3 said, you know, no doubt I want Kane to play the character, especially after I did it a second time, you know. People were like, okay, finally, somebody actually took the role and made something with it, is what they said, not me. So I just feel real fortunate because that completely changed my whole career. So, simple answer, wasn't it?
So one thing I'm curious about, you mentioned the burn stunt that went wrong. What kind of physical toll has doing these years of stunts taken on you? Do you wake up in the morning in pain, popping joints, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, other than the burns, I've never been seriously injured. And actually, I had, you know, an extensive athletic career in high school, not in college, but a lot of sports in high school. I've been doing stunts for, this is my 37th year, and I've never broken a bone in my life. So I feel that's a pretty good accomplishment because not many people can say that, considering what I've done for a living. And no, I actually don't knock on wood, I don't believe in that shit, but I'm not superstitious that way. Never broken a bone, but I've been racked up, you know, to where I was really sore the next day many times. And now I'm 58, so I see what the damage was done to my knees. Unfortunately, my knees are really bad now, and it's, I never had a direct injury to them, but just the years of hitting the ground wears on you eventually, and so my knees are pretty shot. I think I'll have to have them both replaced. So, you know, that's not a great thing, but other than that, you know, a little bit of back damage, but nothing serious, and a little bit of neck stuff from flipping cars and stuff like that, but mainly just my knees. And I feel fairly lucky because there's a lot of guys that don't end up that well at 58. You know, they can barely walk, and I have a little trouble walking down my stairs in the morning, but, you know, eventually it warms up.
Okay, so and you were mentioning you were started off as Jason in Part 7 in The New Blood, and from what I understand, there was a lot of interference with that movie, just from executives, studio executives saying we need to tone this down, we need to change that. Is that something you recall while shooting, that yourself and John Carl Buechler were getting these notes, this kind of studio oversight?
I think that it was all Buechler having to deal with that crap, because I know that it was happening, but they never came to me with that stuff. I don't know if it's because they're afraid I'd fucking rip the head off or something if I was in the right mood, but they never came to me with it. They always go to Buechler and tell them that whatever their suggestions were, it must have been a nightmare for him. But I was able to pretty much do what I thought was right. And, you know, you guys probably have read before that a lot of scenes that I shot as Jason throughout the movies, I didn't necessarily exactly plan what I was going to do. I'd have an idea, I'd block it and say I'm going to go here and here and here, but I wouldn't know what I was going to do until the moment hit me, and I did what felt natural. So in that case, there's no way something can look rehearsed. Because if I didn't know what I was going to do, then there's no way it looked rehearsed, which means it looked more natural. And I've always been told that the success of me playing the character so many more times than anyone else is that it looked more natural. I even look at some of the movies that I didn't do and I look and I say, it looks like he's acting. It looks like he's trying to look scary, and it's not convincing. And it's not an easy thing to do without your facial expressions or your voice to be scary. So it's all in the way you stand. And it's a tricky thing to do. And, you know, a good example of when I ad-libbed something, it wasn't because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had an idea what I wanted to do, but something changed within the scene. and then I had to really ad-lib, is when in Jason Takes Manhattan, the girl is coming out of the shower, and I go in to kill her, and I'm supposed to grab her, throw her. She had a thing on her head that her head would hit the mirror would shatter, and I'd have all kinds of shards to pick from to go after her and stab her. If you know the movie, you see that didn't happen. I throw her, her head hits the mirror and it cracks. And it just stayed there. It was all supposed to fall. And I'm like not gonna ruin that because this is a stunt girl that just did a stunt that wasn't easy. So I'm not gonna say, oh, well, it didn't work what it was supposed to, cut. So I just said, what am I gonna do now? So I just walked over, I punched the mirror to break it the rest of the way, then grabbed the piece and went after her. So, and I think it looked way better that way because that was a real mirror. And I did have a glove on, so I was confident I wouldn't get cut, and I didn't. So it's just kind of an interesting twist that happened, and that happens a lot with playing a character like this. Something is not gonna go the way you think, and you have to just deal with it, and instead of ruining the scene, just move on.
So I've got to pick this scab. I think everybody in the room knows that.
Freddy versus
You got it. Here we go. So I think everybody in the room knows that you were basically shafted out of the role. I'm
Basically, I was completely
straight up shafted out of the role. So my question,
Chris,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Chris Alexander, Fangoria Magazine agrees he was shafted out of the role.
Well, unless you consider not giving me an answer why I was replaced, not being shafted, but I was never told. I was never given a reason why I was replaced. And this comes after having a meeting with executives at New Line Cinema. I had a lunch meeting. They gave me the script, said, we're finally doing this movie. And I was like, great, I've been excited for it for years. And then I went home thinking, well, they gave me the script and said, we're doing this movie, the job is mine. Then they hired a director, and things changed, and suddenly I was out and never told why. To this day, was never told why.
And this is kind of a leading question because you were talking about actors that looked like they were trying to be scary. Have you seen the movie? Have you seen Ken Kurtzinger's performance as Jason?
I did.
What's your honest opinion on that?
For me, he didn't look. There's only one scene where I thought he looked violent enough. And it's a hard thing. You're killing somebody, very often a dummy. So it's hard to really make it look frenetic and extremely violent. You have to go over the top. And the only time I think he was convincing, just in my opinion, was when he was killing somebody in the bed. He was, when it closed up and stuff, that's where he looked really good. That was his best scene in that movie, I think. And, other than that, I mean, he wasn't terrible, certainly. A lot of people liked it, but I didn't feel the power all the time, which I like to feel when I'm watching Jason. I want it to look like there's no way that somebody could get away from this guy once he's got his hands on you, so. And I didn't see the remake, so don't ask about that one.
You got your chance to kill Robert Englund and Freddy Krueger. The second one, sorry if anyone hasn't seen the Hatchet movies. Hatchet 2, you take out Candyman, Tony Todd, and for the third one, the remake, Jason, Derek Mears. Can you talk about just working with Derek Mears? Because I know you haven't seen the remake, I think he's as close to you as we've seen in a long time. Just a real physical, like you say, he's really got that physicality I think has been lacking. So can you just give us a little hint of what's to come with Hatchet 3 against Derek Mears?
By the way, in the first Hatchet, I also killed Josh Leonard from the Blair Witch. In part 2, I killed R.A. Mihailov, who was Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. There's somebody else too. Who am I forgetting? Well, Tom Holland I killed, in the second one. And Derek is in the third one. And contrary to what people seem to want to think or read or whatever, Derek and I are friends. I have nothing bad to say about the guy. He's a good guy. The scene we do in Hatchet 3, it will shock everybody, I think. It's, we finally do a standoff. He has a line to me that's fucking brilliant, first of all. And it was not scripted, he came up with it. Every time we did a take, he said a different line. One of which was, at one point I confront him, we're face to face, and at one take, I think he did it just for the outtakes or something, said, I really enjoyed your work as Jason. And then things happen after that, but he says something to me, and then the scene happens, and I think it'll be pretty shocking to everybody what goes down between the, only one of our characters makes it out of that scene. It's not a movie about him, is it? So, but you know, he's a good guy, and he's a very interesting character in the movie. He's not real likable, but I guess I'm not either, so. But there are so many good surprises in Hatchet 3, I can't wait for people to see it. I wish you could see it in theaters. You know, it's just that Adam Green will not release it wide, because in that case he has to cut things out, and he's so against the MPAA that he'd rather have a less successful movie, which means less money in his pocket, to be able to show the movie he wants to show. And I love that about Adam, that he won't compromise on what he wants to exhibit just because of money. And everybody thinks he's a rich guy or whatever, but far from it. He's you know, he's done what we all, as horror fans, love to see. So.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to everybody in the audience. Any questions for Mr. Hodder? Gentleman in the gray T-shirt.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell recently said that he's doing a movie that's going to be similar to the Expendables with horror stars, and he said you're going to be a major player in the film. Has he talked to you about it yet? Is it coming about, or?
Okay, so the question is, Bruce Campbell is trying to put together a horror version of the Expendables, and has he talked to Mr. Hodder yet?
Well, you know how the internet is. You read things, you never know if it's true, but that one is true. He talked to me about it a while ago. I love the idea. I think it would be the coolest thing to do, but I don't know how far down the line it is because he's so busy. I just had dinner with him, let's see, where was I? In Charlotte. We did a convention together, and a few of us went out to dinner, and he was still talking about it, and I know eventually it'll happen, and I can't wait because, you know, it would finally kind of be, I would hope he would play a character in it. I don't know if he'd play Ash or what, but I think he would probably direct it. And, you know, I think it's something that someone is going to do eventually, and I hope it's him. Because I think he's a real talented guy, so it'd be fun to do. I actually worked with him on his series once on Briscoe County. I did an episode of that, and that was fun. I didn't fight him or anything, but I've done quite a few movies fighting people, you know, like people like Chuck Norris that did the movie I talked about, did some episodes of Walker. Great guy, very fun to fight with. There are some other martial arts guys that aren't so fun to fight with, but, you know, I tend to not talk about that, Steven Seagal, because I think it's rude and unprofessional to mention names, so.
It's funny you should mention that, just because I have some friends that did a Steven Seagal movie, some stunt guys, and they were really excited, and he just beat the hell out of them on set. And not to get too gossipy, is that kind of your experience? You just...
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's rough. I'm the first guy to think that you need some realism when you're beating somebody up, killing them, because I do it in my films. I tell the actors, I'm not going to hurt you, but it's not going to be pleasant either when it comes to our scene. And without fail, they're always like, oh, I'm so glad we did it that way when they see it on the screen. It looks much more violent. So I'm not against making some contact and making a fight scene rough, but, you know, from my experience, you know, making it rough and sending people to the hospital is two different things. And that happens quite a bit. or it happened quite a bit from my experience, and I did 3 movies with him, so.
Okay, and sorry, this gentleman in the back with the first Asian shirt.
Yeah, Ari's a friend of mine, but before my blood sugars pass out and I hit 0. But I gotta.
Go ahead.
This is my first Comic-Con, so if it's a stupid question, please just cut me some slack. 2 things. Number 1, did the whole telekinesis thing at first Jason feel so out of place in the world of Friday the 13th? And what was your take on the whole Steve Dash second Jason controversy?
Okay, so question number, or part 1 is, how did you feel about the telekinesis angle in The New Blood, Part 7? And do you have an opinion on the Steve Dash, Warrington Gillette controversy from Part 2?
The telekinesis thing never really bothered me. I thought it was kind of an interesting angle, and it's, you know, it kind of has somewhat of a paranormal feel to it in a way, and it probably, because of that storyline, made me more likely to get the part in that movie, because she made things happen to Jason that had never happened before. Jason always did all the killing, and rarely anything bad happened to him. So now this script was a complete reversal of that, and all these major stunts were happening to Jason. So they had to consider a stunt person anyway for that role. Other than that, it's stupid to cast someone and then have a stunt double do the stunt things. Then you're paying twice. So it made more sense to cast a stunt guy. And because of that, since Beekler was already pushing for me, and I was an experienced stuntman, they're like, okay, let's take a look at this guy. So, and I don't think it's so bad in the storyline or anything. I think it's just interesting. Maybe could have been written a little bit differently, but the storyline didn't bother me. It never did. And the Steve Dash Warrington Gillette thing is that Steve Dash was the guy that wore the mask in the whole movie. So how do you dispute that? That's why he always signs things the real Jason.
That's why I signed my box then, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't mean the real Jason beyond all of us. He just means the real Jason from Part 2. And it's not inaccurate. I mean, any scene you see where Jason is wearing the mask and doing violent things, it's Steve. So.
Do you think Warren Gillette still deserves some credit, though, for being the guy who jumped through the window?
Well, I mean, you know, the problem is that he was credited. It's hard to dispute the fact that at the end credits it says Jason Warrington Gillette. So, I mean, you know, he was credited that way. I just think maybe from the beginning he could have made it clearer that he didn't do the whole movie. You know, I think Steve wouldn't have had a problem with it. But when Steve starts hearing that this guy is saying that he was Jason throughout the movie, that's not quite accurate or fair. So that's why he got all up in arms about it. But I got no problem with either one of them. I just, you know, want people to be accurate. There's a person that is credited as Michael Myers that isn't really too accurate either. Same type of situation. So, and no, I'm not going to say who, because these cameras are on, and I don't need somebody else suing me for defamation of character like other people have. So.
Thank you.
All right, so we have time for a couple more quick questions, and then we're going to get into the screening. Let's go to this gentleman in the front row.
When you first heard about the plot of Jason X, what did you think about that?
So the question is, when you first heard the plot of Jason X, what did you think?
Now that's a little bit different, that question, because when I heard about it, they said, hey, we're doing Jason X, we're going to shoot it in Toronto. The whole thing was shot in Toronto. And I said, fantastic. They said, we have much more money this time. It's going to be a bigger budget, look better. I was very excited. And they said, it's going to be Jason in space. I said, yeah, what is it really? Jason in space. I know, that was funny the first time, but what is it really? Jason in space. Really? I was hesitant about it. It just seemed a little goofy, but at the same time, I've done 3 previous movies, as Jason, I'm certainly not going to give them a reason to want to recast me by bitching about it. So my thinking was, well, it is Jason in space, but what I can do is make Jason consistent with what I've done before, regardless of the setting. So I justified in my own mind that I could see this working if it still feels like Jason, regardless of what's around him. He's still doing the same stuff, still acting the same way. And so, you know, I was okay with it. There was one scene where Jim Isaac, who unfortunately passed away recently, told me that at the end of the movie, before I read the script, or maybe it was after I read the script and I looked at this scene, I said, hey Jim, you have a scene where there's a fight between Brodsky, the character Brodsky, and Jason in a weightless environment. And I was like, just picturing that, how in the fuck can we do a fight in a weightless environment and not make it look ridiculous? And I said, Jim, you know, I rarely say that I don't want to do a scene, but I don't want to do that scene. And I convinced him that it was a little much. So they cut that scene. There's still the weightless a little bit, you know, going back through the atmosphere and all that, which isn't fantastic either, but it was much better than I could have been stuck with.
Makes more sense.
Yeah.
Makes more sense because they're hitting actual gravity, like within the force of like coming into the atmosphere as opposed to
Right.
just floating around.
It seems like a
space.
reason. Yeah, exactly. And I said, I thought, you know, Jason floating around is not going to look scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill you in 30 seconds.
That's probably what it would have been.
It's coming.
Full set of hair. Like, what's with that?
The full set of hair on,
And Jason X.
Yeah.
well, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know, every movie I did, Jason looked completely different. So it was just a matter of,
This is the best.
you know, well, I agree. That's why I wanted to show this movie,
Yeah,
Part
that's
7.
That's my favorite.
By far the best look of Jason, of the ones I did at least.
The best ones of all.
The makeup was great.
When you come out of the water and, you know,
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it.
So, yeah, well, I'm gonna do commentary as we watch it. But I have a story that you'll hear when I rise up out of the water for the first time.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're gonna cut this off. We gotta get the screening started. So right now I'm gonna introduce close personal friend of Mr. Hodder, Chris Alexander of Fangoria Magazine, editor-in-chief. He's gonna be doing the commentary. Mr. Hodder.
This is exciting, actually, for me. Close personal friend, I think we interviewed for the first time like 3 weeks ago or something like that. But it was a great interview.
We should sit out there.
Yeah, we have to sit, or I was going to say we could tilt the table a little bit. Let's sit out there. All right, let's do it. Let's sit. Two.
Where you sit?
I was gonna sit right here.
Can you make room for me too, guys?
Yeah, you might go.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, listen, this will work in a second, so I'll give you a break for a minute. Not yet coming. But I am Chris Alexander, editor of Fangoria Magazine. This is kind of cool. This is kind of my idea originally. I'm like, if you're going to screen a movie, you got Kane Hodder here, you're going to screen Friday the 13th. These guys have all seen it. Why not have the man himself sit here and just reflect and make fun of it? We can Mystery Science Theater if you want.
Testes, 1, 2, testes.
Whatever you guys want to
1, 2.
do. But I want to make this interactive, so if you want to shout some trivia out, something you know, maybe a question for Kane during the movie, let's make this a fun experience, one that hopefully you won't forget. And I know for me, I could have watched the movie and researched it a bit. I haven't seen it in 20 years, so I'm actually excited to watch it again with almost fresh eyes. So let's dim the lights.
I'm getting nervous. I don't like the dark. I don't like violence either. It's not a violent movie, is it?
It's comedy. Action. Action
A
comedy.
musical, yes.
Yeah, musical. I love musicals.
Well, you know,
Jason X Broadway.
who can yell out the name of the movie in which I danced? Anyone?
Shit. That's a fucking. That's a.
Chillerama.
Ah, of course.
I danced as Meshuggah, the Jewish
And
Frankenstein.
Adam Sandler.
Oh,
Yes, I did.
What was the name of that segment again? Was it Meshuggah or no?
It was.
Diary of Anne Frankenstein.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
right. Yeah. If you want some serious laughs,
No, not
check out
that
Chiller
one.
House.
Wrong one.
Wrong
Move over.
one.
There we go. No. Yeah, there we go. Hey. You must have met Harry Manfredini through the years.
Oh yeah, I know Harry very well. Good guy.
Great scores. I think underrated as a composer. You know, these Friday scores are
Yeah, actually.
iconic, and no one ever gives him the credit when credit is due.